We're very happy to welcome Michael Tobin. He is the president of the Wellesley Preservation Land Trust and has been a well-known person around town, I would say. He has been its president. He's been as president of the Wellesley Conservation Land Trust since 2001. He is interested in photography and drone flying. And he likes to garden at the Western Road Community Gardens. I know where you know where that is. He likes to fish and hike. He has been an elected town meeting member since 2015, and following the leadership of the project to save the North 40, which was a very successful campaign. Michael is vice president and head of technology at Dyne Therapeutics, which is a trailblazing the development of muscular targeted therapies. And he is, which has just been approved to start clinical testing of drugs for muscular dystrophy. Michael also runs a side business. He's an entrepreneur when he's not doing all of his work. And the name of his company is Wicked Clear Ice. And he sells perfectly clear, large format craft cocktail ice, which is sold to Greater Boston bars and restaurants. And if you're interested in clear ice, you can go to the Fells Market and ask for it. It's kind of unique. Clear ice.
There you go, Mike.
Mike has an MBA from Cornell, a bachelor's in electrical engineering from Syracuse, and is a practicing certified information security manager. Michael's wife, Dana Greenberg, is a department chair and a professor at Babson College. And their three children are all graduates of Wellesley High School. So it's my pleasure to welcome Michael Tobin here tonight, and let's give him a round of welcoming.
All right. Thank you. And Tori, for the invitation. I'm always happy to really reintroduce the Land Trust. So much of what I heard tonight was some of the happy discussion and blessings is also about, I think what we are all here for in Wellesley. And so it's nice to be able to help you understand what we have, the assets we have here in Wellesley, and how you can help take part in this. And so I want to reintroduce you to the Wellesley Conservation Land Trust, and also tonight to recognize Pete Jones, served on the board with me for the last 6 years, and his wife Joanne has been an active volunteer with us as well. And so they joined me here this evening to back this up. And so what I said is, right, why is everyone, what makes Wellesley, or East Wellesley for our Needham friends, so attractive? When I talk to folks about what attracted them, why do they live in Wellesley, it's usually three things, and they can be in a different order, but it's the proximity to Boston for good jobs. It is the schools and the quality of the schools, and then it's the green space. And you look around outside and it's the tree canopy, it's the brook paths, it's the conservation land that makes this so attractive. So those three things in combination is what makes Wellesley so attractive. And so it's also important that we keep those three things. And so what I wanted to just demonstrate, I pulled up some old data This was pre-COVID, but I had previously pulled together before. But when you look at real estate, and it's virtually every listing is steps to the Brook path, across from the park, stunning views of conservation land from the private deck. This is what sells houses in Wellesley and attracts people here, right? Of those three things. Walk to Centennial Park and Longfellow Pond. And I did some little statistics on this. And actually, for those that mentioned something about conservation, there's a higher selling price of those houses. Maybe it's location, whatever it is, but this is what attracts people to Wellesley. Abuts conservation and walking trails, right? And so, how do we keep that? And so this is a map from the Natural Resources Commission. I encourage you to go get this and some of its fellow maps from the Natural Resources Commission website. They're fascinating if you're like me and just love to see the details of what's going on in and around town, different types of land, and different views of it. And so this is an open space map that shows different colors. The green is municipal land, Article 97 protection. And so you see around Rosemary, Brook, and the town forest, Centennial Forest, these are some places that are under what's called Article 97 protection. Now, you say, well, that's pretty good, right? Well, there is a way in the state of Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where you can actually trade land that's protected for other land in your town. And so even if something is protected, there are mechanisms to overturn that and swap the space. So it doesn't mean, oh, it's protected forever. And so you just got to understand some of those nuances. What's in orange here is what's called private, and this is currently called temporary protection. And so the Wellesley Country Club, the Woodlawn Cemetery, say some of the land trust properties around Wellesley College, it's temporary protection. And then what's in yellow, private unprotected, so Babson College. And so you can look around Babson College and the woods that surround it and so forth, and you say, wow, I love that green space. I live right behind it or across the street. Well, that could go at any time, should they choose to do that. And that's actually what we saw with the North 40, where that land had been deeded to Wellesley College 140 years ago. Never to be sold and only to be used for agricultural purposes. And the college found a way, when it was appropriate time for them, to be able to sell that land for other purposes. And so that's the North 40 listed right here. What you don't see here, for instance, is this is Pond Road right here. And so while you do see some protection on some of the property on Pond Road, as we have learned about on the north side of Pond Road, some of the construction going on there and what's going to happen in Natick and with the driveway from there, this, while it's designated a scenic byway or scenic road, that only extends about 5 feet. And beyond that, you can destruct it. And so it's not even listed as protected, but we consider it, as we walk by, as we drive by, green space in town. And so what happens, for instance, when you, on where was the RDF in Great Plain Avenue, the 12 acres there, that's now Fieldstone Way, and all the properties there. Yep. Right. Everyone said, look at this beautiful green space in town.
I just said, I wonder what Michael thinks about Fieldstone Way.
Right away.
So
it's a fair question.
It's a fair question, because we were also talking earlier about we don't have enough senior housing in town.
No.
And we don't have enough mid-level price housing and affordable housing. We have a housing problem
Yeah.
in town to keep our seniors and other people here. So we have to, I'm very practical as well.
I
And
appreciate
so
it.
therefore, even when you say, well, the North 40, 1/3 of the purchase price was through Community Preservation Act funds. It needs to be designated open space.
And they've preserved a lot. They also have a path from Fieldstone
Right.
out to the aqueduct. So,
Right.
and they've maintained that
Right.
portion, just so you know.
Exactly. So I'm not against more housing in town.
Yeah, yeah.
What's interesting is when people say, how could this
I
happen?
know.
It's the surprise and the lack of a plan that says, where should our housing in town be?
Yeah.
Right? That's interesting. Yeah.
I just have a quick question. So if you've got, excuse me, if you have private property, how do you have any influence over that? Like, all that land was the college, or even along Pond Road,
Right.
right? Isn't that the Honeywell estate?
So typically this was owned by Honeywell family
Right.
and descendants.
Right.
They're under a conservation also.
They used to be under
Well,
a
they-
conservation.
Part of it is because it's Honeywell Farms. As
Yes.
a matter of fact, I was just over there about a week ago and talked to the manager of that farm because we wanted him to partake in our Veterans Parade with some animals and things like that. But, yeah, and the problem is that it's still saleable, and the question is when is it gonna happen? And what we have to remember also is the town of Wellesley is a developer.
Agreed.
So even our wonderful town will sell things for reasons that we might not like. And that's why we have to.
But they
keep
also
track.
have lots of rules.
Oh, well, lots of rules sometimes change.
Well,
You know, we
Yeah.
try to influence, John and I are on the wetlands, and we try to keep to those rules.
Mhm.
But sometimes the rules have little
Okay.
loopholes in them and things like that that people can key in on, which prevents us from really making it solid. So we try to get the developers and people that build houses to, you know, go along with the program without being, you know, confrontational. In a wetland situation, we have a lot of times where they knock down trees, but we want them to put native trees back rather than invasive trees like Norway maples and things of that nature, which grow like weeds around here, which have no value other than shade. And so we try to influence that with our volunteer committees and stuff, but still, the town is a developer. And if they decide that they want to sell the North 40 there, that 40 acres, which is the almost identical sized property that we own in Maine, it's gone. They could put 240 houses in there tomorrow.
Right. So there is, to your question that you had, that there is some state regulations, wetlands protections, for instance, within 200 yards of water. But otherwise, for the most part, it's then town zoning.
Has anyone talked to some of these property owners and negotiated with them? Can you put us in some level of conservation?
That's why we're here tonight. Why this organization.
Nicely did.
I didn't know.
So, almost 65 years ago, there were some concerned town citizens who formed the Wellesley Preservation Land Trust to do exactly that. And they went around to appropriate owners in town to convince them to donate land or put it under conservation restriction. And so today, that is the 45 to 55 acres of land that we directly protect today. We haven't received a conservation easement donation or donation of land, though, in 20 years. And what I'm happy to announce, to jump to a punchline, is that we're under some discussion, negotiation now for another significant portion of property. But when you go back to the map here, you can say, hey, landowner, you've got 2 acres. Your house is on one of them. Why not put the other acre under a conservation restriction? You own it, you know you will never have a building structure built there, nor will anyone else. because we'll protect that for you in perpetuity. So we have an active campaign now or we are starting an active campaign to go out and proactively look for properties and the owners to have these discussions. There's tax benefits, and whether you're concerned about climate change, whether you're concerned about the beauty of the town, not having a neighbor, whatever it is, or just a good heart, then we have found there are people in town interested in that.
Nice. Thank you.
So our mission, we're a nonprofit, 501c3, just like Mass Audubon, just like trustees of reservations. We're not part of any government organization. We don't get tax dollars. We only get funds through donations and grants. And so as a 501c3, we can own land to be able to protect and preserve that land. We also advocate for it. So we work with the town's Natural Resources Commission. We work with Sustainable Wellesley. We work with Needham and Weston and Natick to be able to advocate for the protection of open space. And then education. And I'll talk about some of our programs for both youth and adults that we've been putting on. Also the NRC, the Natural Resources Commission, our board members helped start the NRC as a town back in the 70s when state law changed and that became very feasible to do. And then so we work with other town organizations to be able to put on our programs and generate interest. So listed here is just to show where some of our properties are. What's interesting to note here is the new sanctuary, which is physically in Weston. And in the 1950s, MIT donated Carisbrook Reservation to Wellesley. But Wellesley couldn't own land in Weston, and so the land trust stepped in to be able to accept that donation to keep Carisbrook and Lanou as contiguous open space. Similarly, generous down by Sabrina Lake, Guernsey Sanctuary, is 27 acres. Half of that is in Needham. And it was the Guernseys who in the 1970s saw what was going on around Sabrina Lake in this part of town and said, we need to protect this space. While these gorgeous houses are going on the east side, they bought up the properties on the west side of the lake and then donated it to the land trust. So we've got the flexibility to be able to do those things. And so when there's the next opportunity, as you may have read about the Sisters of Charity, who sold the Centennial Reservation to the town in the 1980s, early 80s, for $2 million at a significant discount. At the time, with the land trust's facilitation, they said they're looking at how did the longevity of their current property in the current business. And so what does that mean? What does that mean to the town? What does that mean to the current green space around that area? And so there's also, right, how can the land trust play a role in these conversations of businesses and organizations throughout the town? So we've been busy. And what's interesting is that silver lining of COVID, where at first the world stopped and no one was doing anything other than quarantining. But then everyone discovered Zoom and that we have this ability that we can still meet. And in fact, well, it's different and doesn't have all the benefits. You don't have to go out in the rain. You don't have to go out in the dark. You can watch a program while you're feeding the kids or putting them to bed, and so forth. And so we had hundreds of people participate in our Zoom programs during COVID. More people than would fit in the conference room, Wakeland room at the library. So what does that mean going forward? How should we have hybrid meetings, for instance? Should that be when we put on programs? They're in person and on Zoom. So we've got some great opportunities there now that people can participate. And we have people dialing in from all over the country and other countries to watch our programs. So back to just the mission, the key things. Over the last year or so, we kept our spaces open. They're all open to the public. And so when people just needed to go outside and take a walk, clear their head, with their family, our properties, which most have trails on them, are open. We had a precedent-setting court win for Massachusetts land trusts. We had a landowner who had a restriction on their property behind them to not build any structures, and they built structure. And after a long court battle over it, and in a precedent setting for Massachusetts, not only did they need to restore to the best possible the land, but they had damages, had to pay damages for it. And while this case had been tried and proven this way in Connecticut and Maine, this now is a deterrent for landowners to disobey the restriction and the great discount on that property they got because it's not buildable. And so for cash poor land trusts have a little bit more bite to be able to say, you need to follow the restrictions that you purchased in that. So that was great for all land trusts. Our sanctuary cleanup days, people who just want to get out with their families, volunteer. We've been putting those on. We created a new trail, or recreated a new trail, a patch of woods on Glen Road that had been lost over time. And, over COVID, we restored that. Invasive plant removals, and then as a nonprofit, we're also proud we have the highest level of Charity Navigator of a nonprofit, 100% in everything that we can for our size be rated at. And then GuideStar, the other rating nonprofit agency, we're the highest level, platinum, which is like 0.5% of all nonprofits have that level of designation. So we've been doing good work. And then this education that I mentioned. We have had all of these speaking events. We've had the walking events. We put on a bat walk for the first time. We had 55 people come out on a late July evening on a Tuesday night to watch the bats. And right on cue, they came out, and everyone, whoa, duck! And so these.
Where was that?
We did that Morse's Pond. Or you can go to my backyard too.
And they actually dial into the frequency. And different frequencies in different areas of the country and the world. And you can actually dial in and hear the bats talking. Very, very interesting.
Here's the other great thing that we did this year that hadn't been done. So the Land Trust in 1965 had published a book on the geology of Wellesley. It was by the wife of a professor at geology at Wellesley College. And I knew there would, every now and then we'd get interest for, hey, can we buy this book? And well, it's not published anymore. We've got a PDF that we hand out. I met someone over the years who said, it's wrong. I'm like, what do you mean it's wrong? The rocks haven't changed. And they said, no, but our understanding of the science has. In 1965, plate tectonics wasn't a fact at the time. It was still debatable. Now we have plate tectonics. Now we have carbon dating, and so on and so forth. And so, anyway, we put together 3 amateur geologists in town, and they put on 2 Zoom programs and 2 field walks. We had hundreds of people participate in these.
And problem rock turned out not 200 million years old. People in the town, even the town police said, who put that rock there? It was Mother Nature, this pudding stone, and they had it marked incorrectly. They said 200 million, it ended up being 600 million years And that's what we've learned over time with factual science.
Right.
And then when my daughters were, and I'm sure you think, when they were in
Fourth.
fourth grade, they do a geology unit.
Yep.
And I was one of the chaperones. I loved it. It was fascinating.
So Wellesley Media recorded the field walks. Thank you, Paul. And you can now find them on a link from our website and on Wellesley Media's YouTube site. And we also recorded the Zoom talks also on our website. They're fascinating. We
They
got,
really are.
and we had the Wellesley Middle School science coordinator say, we want to bring this into the science program at the middle school. We had a structural geologist who lives in Wellesley said, I want to help participate and push this along. And yesterday I was contacted by the new Babson College geology professor who said, I heard you put this program on, I want to get involved. So I think we're going to start a rock crew because there's clearly interest. So just again, examples of whether you're interested in birding or just going out and seeing birds on a nice Sunday in May. Every Sunday in May. If you're interested in our rocks, if you're interested in the tree canopy, and so forth, we are here to help facilitate those things.
And you might want to add one other thing. So, the Guernsey Sanctuary, which is 27.5 acres, which are our biggest property that we own here, has complete bridging provided by the Boy Scouts, their Special Eagle Scout projects, etc., going out to an island, Oak Island, that was created man-made. The whole lake was created by Irish immigrants back in the 1800s, by hand, dug out by hand. And at that area, he stocked it with largemouth bass. And I want to tell you, that when we started the eco program for the town of Wellesley, we started this eco, we had no idea that anybody would even care about this eco program. We had the kids do all sorts of different events. One of the events was we got with the Mass Wildlife and Fisheries Department. They provided, more than happy to do it, fishing rods and bait. We went over there, and the guy forgot the bait. Well, let me tell you what happened. So when we were kids, we learned that if you take an elastic band, put it on a hook, the fish thinks it's a worm. These kids were throwing these hooks out with elastic bands and bear hooks and pulling bass out of there to the 2-pound range. They'd never fished before in their life. And you should have seen the look. You probably have some of the old pictures.
Yep.
And that dock is open to the public. You go out and fish on the dock if you'd like to do that on the Guernsey side. So we did about 2 seasons and then turned it over to the town of Wellesley for the eco camp for the kids. This year, she was totally overbooked. And it's good that we got the town involved because she was able to.
They sold
2
out
weeks.
2 programs.
2 programs.
For middle schoolers.
So there's an interest in it, and we had no idea that Matthew and I said, will anybody go to this? Sure as hell, they showed up to do this. It was amazing.
Sells
Much
out.
easier to bait a rubber band.
Now you know what to use.
I
Yeah, he came back and all the kids had got all these fish. And he goes, what happened? I said, we should have rubber bands.
Every kid catches a fish.
Yeah,
Same this
exactly.
year.
Yeah, exactly.
So the Rotary is a service organization. We've got some common interests and overlaps. So how can we work together? I've had this idea, and I've brought to John a couple of times, and I know we can make it happen one day and make it a sustainable program. No pun intended, but do the arbitrary giveaway. We've got Walks in Wellesley book, but let's give every 4th grader, every 4th grade family a Wellesley Walks book along with the sapling. I think that would go a long way. So just one idea.
But there's a cost, right?
Yes. Well, right. So, right, the books retail for $18.50 each. You know, we've got a most of that is our cost as well. Wellesley Books makes a little bit of it, but someone's got to fund that book.
Right.
sanctuary cleanup. Everyone loves to get out once in a while and just get their hands dirty and feel good doing some cleanup. Maybe it's at the sanctuary that's at the end of your road or whatever it is. Engaging children in other outdoor programs. We go through, whether it's a rock program, a fishing program, a drone flying program, like get kids outside into nature. They love it. What about this potential for additional land protection? How can we find owners who are interested, whether it's because the goodness of their heart, or there's typically a dollar benefit that goes along with it? How can we convince, well, not even convince, but just let them know the option exists, and then convince them. Other service projects, and certainly open to other ideas.
And one of those service projects was a joint venture with the NRC and Rotary showed up. And we built a boardwalk. And I gotta tell you, that boardwalk at the vernal pool, number 32, is wicked popular.
Yeah, people are walking on it.
Like crazy.
It's at the end of Turner Road.
The North Fork Community Gardens.
And that was done in the middle of the winter, wasn't it, Ron?
That was a good time to do it, right?
Yeah. We wish it was summer.
Well, it's had that restriction, I think.
And plus it's handicap accessible.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So, for us, what's been interesting,
I have a question.
oh, yes.
So, I was thinking about the sanctuary cleanup. You mentioned removal, but what about planting?
Yeah.
Because, and I think you can remove it, but if you don't,
Exactly.
it's just gonna come back unless you put something there so that it.
Exactly right. Where in many cases, removing the invasives and then replacing with a native. Important to do. We partner and have gotten volunteer work from the Native Plant Trust in Framingham, and who've helped given us suggestions and ideas and what's the soil type and what will grow there and so forth. And so Pete's been involved in those things as well. So yes, the planting of as well. We've put a lot of programs over Zoom on the native plants, pollinators, and also taking care of your backyard using sustainable practices. And who are the providers, the landscapers who will do it using good practices. So yeah, the ideas, we have more ideas than we have volunteers to lead these programs. So we've been able to triple our membership over the last number of years. We've increased our donations, we've increased our email list. We have more people looking to volunteer than we have board or volunteer leaders to lead them. So we've got this middle leadership spot that we need. Hey, yeah, we're turning down some people who want to volunteer. Which hurts, right? And so, one, keep up to date with us. Look, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, our website, our email list, and so forth. I took your names. If you want to scratch your name off, if you didn't like what I said, just let me know. But hopefully, I said something that interests you, that you'll stay on our email list, and we love to find ways to participate with the Rotary organization to continue this, because what I see is there's so much, whatever it is that interests that person, there's so much out there for us to really take advantage of. And so now it's just our creative minds and leadership to make it happen. Thank you. Any other questions or ideas? Yes.
Is there any way to get into the Rosemary Brook area?
I get in there by drone. I fly over
You mean
into it.
I don't think there's a trail in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We can go back and look at the map.
So where is Rosemary?
Rosemary is on the north side of Route 9. It is basically the brook coming out of Longfellow Pond, going to the Charles.
Right here. So
I
this
don't think
is
there's any
this is
access.
Route 9.
It's over by
Oh,
Cedar.
I
It's over
agree,
by
there is.
Cedar and
Pardon?
I went to look. recently.
There's no way in
I don't
there.
think so.
No,
No.
no, and there's a
No.
pond, there's a big piece of water, and isn't that Red Wing?
Yes.
Yeah,
Because
Red
I sold
Wing.
houses on that.
Red Wing
Yeah.
Road.
Yeah,
Yeah, so Longfellow, as a matter of fact, that was my first Eagle Scout program back in 1966, I think. We did it where we,
I think it's
when we cleaned out that whole pond and stocked it with bass, by the way, big bass, and the crawfish, etc. That whole area there was actually a 7-stop nature walk there because the indigenous people of that area there, they used to find arrowheads, etc. in the area. So that hasn't been reestablished yet in that area. So that's a nice walk and a nice historical idea by the esker there, that's there, and which is a glacial deposit down there. And so that's something that could be improved on if they would reestablish that. That was a joint venture between the Land Trust and the Wellesley Conservation Commission, it was called, and now it's the Natural Resources Commission. But that's kind of gone by the wayside for other projects. But that is a nice historical walk through there, and we still have the documentation of what's there and what should be talked about there.
Are there paths, like, so is
Yeah,
that
you can walk
one?
around
There
the
are.
whole-
I have not seen, okay.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, John and I were doing some wetlands work down in that area also, because there's a pipeline that goes underneath that area.
And it looks like they're planting apple trees, huh? I assume the town's
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah. It's just like sort of a little bit challenging to get,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
you know,
And it should be reestablished.
yeah,
And there has to be volunteers to do that.
yeah.
That's the issue, getting people out to do physical work. Yeah.
Anyone have any land to donate?
Wouldn't that be a bonus?
If you don't ask,
Right.
You never know.
you don't know.
This
So-
parcel that you might be getting, where is it?
I'd rather not discuss.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
until you get it.
Right.
Doesn't want to jinx it.
There are opportunities, some of those opportunities are more challenging than others. I mean, some of them are almost impossible, and would take a lot of money to reestablish. I used to be on the land management team, and there's a lot of work in some of those to reestablish it, and it costs a lot of money to get that work done if you don't have a huge volunteer force.
So just incidentally, it's a fun story when, so as I've been listing Fieldstone Way, I would be on site and people would drive in and be like, where's the pond? And this is when I was just selling the front and I didn't even realize there was this big pond behind it. So we walked back, like I would trek back there with people. So behind Fieldstone Way, there is a pond. It's between Eisenhower Circle, like the Fullerbrook neighborhood. Is it on there? Can you see it?
It's not shown on this map.
Okay, so I know it's part of conservation land, but the farmer who used to own the property of Fieldstone Way put lights out on this pond. So I had so many people, I mean a handful, like I can count on 2 hands. People would be like, where's the pond? So I figured it out.
Yeah.
But the kids from the Fullerbrook neighborhood and along Great Plain used to go out and skate.
Yeah.
And he piped music and put lights. I mean, now it's conservation land. You
Yeah.
can't- You know, nobody could do that anymore, you know, but he didn't own it.
Well,
But-
you know, part of conservation is recreation.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point.
the DCR, which is the state organization, that's part of their repertoire, is recreation. As a matter of fact, John and I just looked at the walkway down at 100 Williams Street.
that's nice. It's a nice
And I
walk.
took Joanne down there. They had complied with all the wetlands rules and regulations, and it's a beautiful walkway, and you can plug your electric car in free of charge there.
Free of charge.
Couple
Yeah.
minutes.
Well, that's why John went down, okay?
It's only temporary, I'm sure, until they all get onto the grid. But, yeah, so it's a very nice walking area there, but the DCR handles a lot of the wetland areas around also. And there's rules and regulations that they impose. But part of the thing is recreation. So when you say no, it's only because here in the town of Wellesley, we have stopped that. over at Bates, they used to block the stream up in the winter, flood the area, and they had lights there, and they used to skate there. Morse's Pond, the two ponds down by Stone Cleve and Russell Road, that area, those two ponds there, those also used to have lights and skating. The problem is, not enough people are doing that, and the weather needs to freeze, which will come back eventually, because it's all cyclical. So, but again, part of the conservation is recreation.
Yeah.
So don't ever think that you can't do recreation.
No, I just think it's lovely that people have these memories
Yeah.
of the
Now,
town.
we've been here 75 years, so we've seen all of those great things
Yeah.
that had. It'd be nice to bring some of those back.
No, I agreed, and people like, I mean, like told me stories, I was like, I felt like I should cry, you know, like, I mean, really, it was,
And the
it was very heartfelt.
old joke used to be, how many times did you fall through the ice skating
Well,
on
yeah, I
Moses
didn't ask
Pond?
those questions. But
No, we
yeah.
used to have ice boat races out of, as a matter of fact, this past winter was the first time I've seen it freeze
That more so.
to over a foot or so in the middle of that pond, and everybody was out there skating.
It was good to
Yeah,
see.
no, it's
So,
nice.
so the whole thing, the earth shakes and changes and stuff, and it's slowly coming back.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Well, to Michael's point, the silver lining of COVID, like I think more people were willing to try things like
Well,
that.
recreation is becoming very popular
Yeah, yeah.
on these ponds and wetland areas.
John, Tori, thank you very much.
Thank you.